I just wanted to take a video to show the sort of development in Colombia, and this sort of thing is everywhere you go. And most of these have been built over the past 2 years roughly. There were a few of them up when I was here about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and now there are way, way more. So there are how many separate buildings? One, two, three, four, and then there are like two layers of them. And I counted roughly, not exactly, the amount of units that are going to be in each. So from what I can see, there are going to be, my guess is at least 16 units on each floor, because they're quite extensive. And I assume it's what, like 2 by 8, something like that. And then there are about 24 or 25 floors in each building, and you can see here there are layers. So it's not just these ones up the front. It's like, I don't know, is it two layers? And I don't know, are they going to be developing more? But like, this is everywhere in Medellin, and in Ireland it seems like the government can't accommodate building anywhere. If you can see maybe off in the distance also, you would probably see just all skyscrapers like literally everywhere. And that's basically just accommodation for apartments, which are literally everywhere. And there is development all over the city, and just this sort of thing was what I wanted to make note of, because everywhere you go in Medellin there are massive apartment complexes being built and massive buildings being built. And I don't think the influx of immigration here, or population growth generally, other than having healthy birth rates, is similar to how it has been in Europe in recent history, and Europe being overburdened in as far as infrastructure, and we're getting a massive increase in population, but at the same time there is not the sort of development that you see in a country like Colombia. And Ireland is supposed to be so well developed and so first world, and we're supposed to be so fortunate to live in Ireland, but Ireland is really boring, and Ireland is really poorly managed, and there is a serious lack of infrastructure compared to Colombia, which is my experience recently. Everywhere I go here, there are like basketball courts, there are like soccer pitches, as we can see across the river here. There are like cycle lanes everywhere. They have like skate parks, like big skate parks, like rinks for rollerblading, and I assume they turn them into ice skating rinks around Christmas. And there's there's community art projects everywhere, like graffiti, but it's also accommodated by the people managing the city generally. And there are all sorts of social spaces that are built, called library gardens, where they have like libraries and places surrounding them to sit and for people to hang out. And they have like little hubs of social activity, and there are like benches everywhere. And here is kind of, it's not super urban. I'm just going for a walk, but you get a sense even here that it's very relaxed. It's very friendly to life. It's urbanized, but there are a lot of amenities too, and there is just good roads. The roads are so much better here than where I'm from in Ireland. It is ridiculous, the traffic in my city and how limited the ability to create new roads in and around the city is, and the lack of development outside of Cork city centres or the centres of Ireland generally. I mean, Medellin is a sprawling metropolis, and it's like a number of cities strung together in a greater super city. But considering it's supposed to be the third world, like the cost of an apartment here, I could get an apartment for like 20-ish grand. If I'm going to be looking for an apartment in Cork, I'm going to get really crappy place for maybe 250,000 euros if I'm lucky. And that's, like more than 10 times the cost here. And here is just so much more pleasant to live. And here you really spend a fraction on things like utilities because you don't ever really need to heat your house, and you don't usually need to use air conditioning because it's temperate, it's not really hot. So your costs as far as amenities are much lower. The ability to have a social life and live life generally is greatly accommodated by the weather, the beautiful environment, the beautiful views everywhere, the beautiful women everywhere, the generally amicable people. I had a few instances, but like there were nothing burgers. I dealt with them appropriately. And, as far as like danger, I feel safer here than I do in modern Ireland. So like this place is beautiful. I really want to buy an apartment here. And I would be very, very happy to live here long term, just with the state of Europe in decline and the intentional mismanagement of the country and its resources and the lack of development of infrastructure with the growing population, but a growing population that's largely third world, and like Africans and Arabs are like, the scientists and the ones we're depending on in the future, which for me anyway seems to indicate a fairly grim future with a lot of incompetence that would not have been such a thing if things stayed the way that they were. But the changes in Europe, all the excuses about needing to have enough people to man the workforce, but this subsequent to generations of anti-natalist propaganda and feminist propaganda to make women hate men and see family as a prison and not want to procreate and instead want to subjugate themselves to the multinational corporations who would use them as human resources and another means of reducing wages, creating more options for them as far as employees, and making workforces more interchangeable and employees less empowered generally. So yeah, the main thing that I wanted to show was just the development and the buildings, but it's also, it's nice to see how generally relaxed and calm and pleasant this country is, and especially compared to Ireland. Where I am in Ireland and how Ireland is changing, it just seems more and more hostile and less relaxed, and you have less privacy and less tranquility where you go, and it doesn't seem like there is any investment in infrastructure that is pro-social like we have here, with outdoor gyms and playgrounds and parks and benches and things like that everywhere, and beautiful landscaping, and the environment itself being particularly beautiful as well. it seems especially crazy when there are so many billions sent off to foreign aid programs, including funding wars like the war in Ukraine. And apparently the, once neutral Irish government is sending how many billions to a war that we should have nothing to do with. And meanwhile, we have no infrastructure to have pro-social environments and encourage pro-social behavior in an apparently very wealthy first world country, whereas quote-unquote third world countries are so much more socially harmonious, and they're so much more invested in what seems like functional infrastructure, because the roads here seem better than back home. The extent of the construction industry, I know the population is greater, but still, Medellin alone outperforms Ireland dramatically as far as development, and Ireland as a whole has a larger population than Medellin itself. But as far as I'm concerned, outside of Dublin, Ireland is very well developed, or very impressive, especially when we compare it fairly to the so-called third world, where things seem to function a whole lot better. The environment seems to be a whole lot healthier. There's so much more invested in places for people to spend time together and to get exercise and to hang out. I mean, if you had environments like this in Ireland, in Cork, where I'm from, you'd probably have like police hassling the children hanging out there, or the people hanging out there, and basically trying to break up social groupings because maybe some of them might want to occasionally smoke a joint or something. I've experienced this in my youth, and I know the situation, and as far as like policing in Ireland has gotten much more stringent and strict since then, or at least from my exposure to it. I mean, comparatively, people here have so much, and comparatively the amount of money that a country like Ireland spends, the GDP, the budget, compared to a country like Colombia, that although larger, per capita makes a lot less money, but they seem to be able to do a hell of a lot more for the citizenry and normal people than Ireland, under the current management especially, who seem really anti-native and anti-Irish. And where are the development of parks and projects like this? Where is the development of pro-social infrastructure? Pardon me. So I think Ireland has so much potential, and you see poor countries in Latin America, if you come here, they have come such a long way, and they have achieved such a lot with relatively much less than we have in some parts of Europe, especially Western Europe, monetarily. And what is done with the resources that the state has here seems to be much more in the favor of the people who live here. And for me, it is apparent everywhere I go here. It just seems like people are happier, people are healthier, life is more accommodating. The infrastructure, I mean, like, you have buses running all over the city at like all hours. like way more frequently, and with a wider duration of schedule than in Ireland. And you have a metro system here that outdoes anything. Like the Lewis is absolutely shit compared to the Medellin Metro. Cork has nothing comparable. Galway has nothing comparable. Nothing in Ireland has anything comparable. And people who are myopic and lack the perspective of actually having traveled the world to the extent that they can actually see how it is in other places, think that we're lucky in Ireland and think that we're not suffering from massive corruption or a massive misappropriation or misuse of funds, and taxpayers essentially are being fleeced and robbed, and all the money being spent, or at least a significant amount of the money being spent, is being spent on things that are really undermining the power of the natives and their ability to do well in life. And a lot of it is being given to false asylum seekers, false refugees, massive amounts invested in non-governmental organizations, all this disgusting, toxic, political money wasting, where it's just like a lot of people who are fucking creating situations where they can create money from the non-production of any goods or the creation of services that are entirely unnecessary and unhelpful, and in fact harmful, because there's billions invested in lawyers and solicitors and for organizations who are covering the costs for false asylum claims and things like that. They're not productive, they are counterproductive, they are a net negative to the economy, whereas, we could be using those billions to be building outdoor exercise areas to keep the population healthy. We could be building a little, sporting arenas and pitches where we could have people in a more pro-social environment, and we could have people, living healthier lives and being encouraged to spend time together, rather than wasting billions on unnecessary, unjustifiable legal proceedings entirely based around and built around corruption. And the amount of money being wasted on things like this and other scams is beyond comprehension, is not the sort of stuff that any sort of light is being shed on. It's not information that the public has access to, because it's all obfuscated, it's all hidden, and it's all intentionally done to basically imprison us in legislative instruments created from our tax euros and paying corrupt legal actors or NGO actors who are completely self-concerned and are pushing political agendas that are entirely against the interest of the taxpayers, who they are essentially vampirizing in the funding of these organizations and these legal claims and these fake charities and these organizations that essentially run economic espionage to undermine the country and subvert and destroy it from within. So I just wanted to show a little bit of perspective on how beautiful things here are in the third world, and how much potential even a not very wealthy country can have when you don't have tens of billions of euros being pissed away in unnecessary, unjust, malicious legal proceedings entirely organized by selfish, parasitic scum who are destroying many nations, not just Ireland. So on that note, there is so much potential that is untapped. There is so much that we could do. There is so much money being wasted that we could be putting into pro-social projects, into projects that are good for the general health of the fucking nation, of any nation, and we need to start doing that. And we need to start making very, very clear and very, very public where all money is being spent and sent, and constantly audit the utility of that, or else we're just paying for our own torture and death. So goodbye and good luck.